Hey friends! We're going to practice identifying both a decimal and a fraction for each of these visual models. So for number 1, remember that this is a square that represents one whole. The whole thing represents one whole. And it's been divided into 100 equal pieces. You can see 10 columns going down and 10 rows going side to side. And we know, of course, that 10 times 10 gives us 100 equal pieces. So in fraction form, we're going to have some number that's been shaded out of 100 equal pieces. And all I have to do is just count, let me use my highlighter, count up what's been shaded. So I have a group of 10 here, and then 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So I've got 16 out of 100 equal pieces. Now, how are we going to write that in decimal form? Well, I know I'm going to have a 0 and then a decimal point because it's not one whole that's been shaded in. So I won't have anything in my ones place. I have 1/10, which was this group of 10 that I first shaded here. And then I have 6/100ths shaded. So that's how you write 16/100ths. Okay, so that's fraction form and decimal form. Now let's look at number 2. This is a visual model that looks a little bit different. So let's start by figuring out how many equal pieces we have. I'm predicting it's probably 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, okay. So I know that my denominator is going to be 10 because I have 10 equal pieces. And how many are shaded? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7/10. And how will we write that as a decimal? I don't have one whole, so I need to put a 0 and then a decimal point, and I have 7/10. Okay, so for numbers 3 through 6, we're going to write each of these decimals as either a fraction or a mixed number. And I can see that for 3 and 4, I'm going to have a fraction because I have a 0 in the ones place. So that's going to be fraction form. And then for numbers 5 and 6, I'm going to have a mixed number because I can see that I do have a digit in my ones place. So that represents a quantity that is greater than one whole. Now, until you get really comfortable working with tenths, hundredths, and thousandths, I do recommend that you use a place value chart whenever you're working on these assignments. So for number 3, I have nothing in my ones place because I have a 0 right here. I have my decimal point and then 6/10. So in order to write that as a fraction, 6/10, I would write it numerator 6, denominator 10. Okay? Now for number 4, I have nothing in my ones place, decimal point, 7/10, and 3/100ths. 73/100ths would be written like this. 73 numerator, 100 denominator. For number 4, remember we're going to have a mixed number now. I have a 6 in the ones place, decimal point, 9/10. 6 and 9/10 would be written like that in fraction form, or in mixed number form. Okay? Now for number 6, I have 8 ones, decimal point, 5/10, 7/100ths. 8 and 57/100ths is written like this in mixed number form. For numbers 7 through 10, we're going to again use our place value chart. And we're going to fill in the numerator and the denominator into its correct place value position. Okay? So for 7/10, I have no ones, decimal point, 7/10. So that's how you would write that as a decimal. Number 8, I have 33 hundredths. So that represents a value that is less than 1 whole. I have no ones, decimal point, 33 hundredths. See how the place value chart makes everything easier? For number 9, now I have a mixed number. So I have a 7 in the ones place, decimal point, 2/10. The 2 goes in the tenths place value position. So really the denominator tells you where the digit of the numerator should go. But the denominator itself will not appear in your decimal form, if that makes sense. Okay, so let me see. 7 and 2/10 is going to look like this. 7 and 2/10. 3 and 9 hundredths. Yeah, 9 hundredths. Ooh, now this one's a little trickier, guys. Look at this. 3 and 9 hundredths. I don't have any tenths because my denominator is hundredths. That tells me that this digit 9 needs to go in the hundredths place value position, which means I'll have a 0 in the tenths place. 3 and 9 hundredths. Okay, guys, now for this next section, things get a little trickier. We're being asked to use division to change each fraction to a decimal. And in order to understand this part of the assignment, I need to make sure that everyone has learned, and I don't know if this is something you remember from 4th grade, has everybody learned that a fraction symbol or a fraction bar is really also means the same thing as a division sign? I don't know if you guys knew that. So 4/5 written in fraction form can also be read like this. 4 divided by 5. Now, if you are not taking good notes, this is where I want you to pause this video, go get a piece of paper and a pencil and take some notes because this is a little bit trickier. We're going to take 4 and divide it into 5 equal pieces. So think about this for a second. Make an estimate. Do you think that our answer is going to be more than 1 whole or less than 1 whole? If we have 4 pizzas and we want to share them with 5 friends, will each of our 5 friends get their own whole pizza? No, they're each going to get less than 1 whole. So we know that our answer, we can estimate, I'm going to make a little estimation sign here, we can estimate that our answer will be less than 1 whole. And that makes sense because we're being told to convert this fraction to a decimal. Okay, so we need to take 4/5 and convert it to a decimal. And the way I'm going to suggest you do this is in 2 parts. You probably learned last year in 4th grade about common denominators. The easiest way to turn a fraction into a decimal is to change denominator 5 to a denominator of 10 over here. So I want to convert this 4/5, whoops, to an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 10. And I can do this using a visual model if I want. Like if I had something with 5 equal pieces, I could shade in 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm going to multiply this by 2 and see how many equal pieces I end up with. So if I cut my 5 equal pieces each into 2, Now I have 10 equal pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have 10 equal pieces. And how many of them are shaded yellow? Count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, do you think it would be easy to change 8/10 to a decimal? I can write that like this, 8/10. Okay, let's do another one. Now I want to take 12 25ths and I want to find a way to convert that to a decimal. Okay, now remember what I told you on our previous problem. 12 25ths can also be read 12 divided by 25. So imagine that I had 12 delicious pizzas and I wanted to share them with 25 of my best friends. Would every single one of my best friends get their own delicious pizza? No. So our answer is definitely going to be less than one whole. Always good to start with an estimation. That way you know your answer should be less than one whole when you're all done, and if you get something that's not close to that, probably you have made a mistake. Let's take our 12 divided by 25. We're going to change this to an equivalent fraction with a denominator of not 10 this time because our denominator is already greater than 10, but now we're going to change it to have a denominator of 100. So you're probably wondering, how are we going to change our denominator of 25 to a denominator of 100? Let's start with a visual model. Imagine that you have a quarter and you want to know how can you multiply this so that you have not just 25 cents, but 100 cents or $1. You would have to multiply your 25 cents times 4. So we're going to multiply our denominator and our numerator times 4 to get an equivalent fraction. And the reason this is important is because we want this denominator of 100. That makes it easy to put our fraction in decimal form. Another way to visualize this is imagine that you have one whole, which I have drawn kind of roughly here in this form. This represents our one whole, and it's been divided into 25 equal pieces. 25 equal pieces. I'm going to shade in 12 of those pieces so that I can represent this fraction here. So now I've shaded in 12 of those equal pieces, and I want to further divide my whole so that instead of having 25 equal pieces, I'll have 100 equal pieces. So when I do that, can you see that my yellow pieces are multiplying along with my whole? So now I have not 12 pieces shaded yellow. Now I have 48 equal pieces shaded yellow. So 48 out of 100 is equivalent to 12 out of 25. And 48 out of 100, or 48 hundredths, is easy to write in decimal form. Next we have 1 out of 50 equal pieces, which we can read 1 divided by 50. Let's start with our estimate. If I have one delicious pizza and I'm going to share it with 50 of my best friends, will everybody get their own delicious pizza? No, definitely not. Everybody's going to get a much smaller piece, so way less than one whole. Okay, let's go ahead and convert 1/50th to an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100. I know I have to do 100 for my denominator and not 10 because my denominator is already greater than 10. So I've got to go to my next bigger place value, which is hundredths. This one's a little easier to quickly change. What can I do to my 50 to change it to 100? I can multiply it times 2. And whatever I do to my denominator, or bottom number, I also need to do to my numerator, or top number. So 1 times 2, of course, is 2. So that means that 1 out of 50 equal pieces is equivalent to 2 out of 100 equal pieces. And that is how you would write that in decimal form. I have no tenths, and I have just 2 little hundredths. 2 hundredths. All right, we have one more to do. Stay with me. So now we're going to take 11 twentieths, and we're going to visualize that as 11 divided by 20. If I have 11 cheesy, melty, delicious pizzas and I want to share them with 20 of my closest friends, will everybody get their own delicious pizza? No. I would need at least 20 pizzas for that to be the case. So again, my answer will be less than 1 whole. I'm going to take my 11 twentieths and convert it to some number out of 100 equal pieces. So what can I do to my 20 to turn it into a 100? I'm going to multiply it by 5, and that's what this will look like visually. I'm going to show you. Okay, so here I have my 1 whole, and I have divided it into 20 equal pieces. Just take my word for it, please. It really is 20 equal pieces, pretty much. Okay, and I have shaded in 11 of those equal pieces. Now I'm going to cut up my delicious cheesy pizza here. Pretend that's what this is. And let me see, I'm going to cut it into 5 additional sections. So I'm gonna go 1. Okay. So now, when I do that, I've got 55 out of 100 equal pieces shaded in. And 55 hundredths is written in decimal form like this. Okay, guys, we're making progress. We have one more question to do. This says when you convert 63 hundredths to a fraction, which of the following could be the first step of the process? Now, could is a very interesting word. Whenever you see the word could, it kind of indicates that there could be several different possibilities or several different ways to answer the question. So let's look at each of these and see which we think is accurate. Since there are 63 hundredths, multiply 63 and 100. B, since there are 63 tenths, no, that doesn't make sense. We can get rid of that immediately. And I know that doesn't make sense because 63 hundredths has a digit in both the tenths place and the hundredths place. When we're reading our place value for decimals, whatever our last digit is, whatever place value position that's in, that's the place value word you would say. Since we have a 3 in the hundredths place, that's our place value word that we will say, not tenths. Okay, C, so that was B. B is gone. A is still a possibility. I haven't eliminated that one yet. C, since there are 63 tenths, oh, there that is again. Nope, get rid of it. No such thing as 63 tenths. That's not accurate? No. Okay, D. Since there are 63 hundredths, place 63 over 100. That one makes more sense to me. 63 hundredths, place it over 100. Okay, that one is the correct answer. And that makes sense to me because if I get my handy dandy place value chart up, I can put my digits into the place value chart. So I have no ones, decimal point, six tenths, and 3 hundredths. 63 hundredths would look like this in fraction form. So D is the correct answer. All right, you made it through my video. Good job, guys. You should all get a 100 on this assignment.